Today on The Real Story, we're talking about the capital city, including a one-on-one with outgoing Mayor Luke Bronin. We reflect back on his time in office, the triumphs and tribulations, where Hartford stands today, and what's next for Luke Bronin. And then we look toward the future leader of the capital city. We're going to look at some of the biggest issues facing Hartford's next mayor, breaking down who's on the ballot, and we'll look back at interviews with several candidates sharing their plans and priorities. It's all today on The Real Story. Good morning, and thanks for joining us on The Real Story. I'm Jenn Bernstein. Well, today we are going to focus on Connecticut's capital city, Hartford, population more than 121,000. The city is about to undergo a change in leadership. Mayor Luke Bronin is not running for a third term. He took the time to talk and walk with us a bit, to reflect on his efforts in office and to share his hopes for Hartford's future. Mayor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What's it like knowing that you're sitting in this office and in a couple of months you're going to be doing something else?
I've not spent a lot of time thinking yet about what I'm going to be doing after. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff that we're trying to get done before the clock runs out. And so, most of these days are focused on how do we take those things that we're trying to move down the field and get them as far down the field as possible. There's so much economic development work. There's so many initiatives we have underway. So there's, people are saying, are you slowing down? You feel like you're relaxing? Right now, I feel like we're moving faster than ever.
It's taken a lot of work to get to this point, right? So let's start back in 2016 when you took office. This picture is from 2016, and it's your first appearance as mayor on The Real Story with Al Terzi and myself, who were hosting. And I remember you coming on, and at that time, Hartford was on the edge of bankruptcy. And I remember us asking you, you finally got under the hood, how bad are Hartford's finances? And you said something along the lines of, worse than I thought.
Yeah, it was worse than I thought. The city was bankrupt. It was not legally bankrupt, but it was financially bankrupt. And it was facing an immediate shortfall, but then a cliff that was dramatic, just a year and then 2 years ahead. And so, as you and I talked about then, we were determined, my team and I were determined not to just buy some time, not to just get us from one year to the next, not to figure out how to piece it together, but to really try to give this city a fighting chance of getting some long-term stability and have an opportunity to grow. And that's what we tried to do. And it started with just being open and honest about the size of the problem and not hiding it, but saying this is how big it is and this is why it's this big. And then doing all the things that we could within our power to tackle it, right? We made some really deep and difficult cuts that our community felt. It means our community was a part of that process.
Layoffs, concessions?
Layoffs, reductions in service. And then we asked our unions for a lot of concessions, and they stepped up in a big way. And we asked our companies to be part of the planning, and they came forward with some significant financial contributions. And of course, we also built that critical partnership with the state of Connecticut, where the state assumed those long-term debt obligations. But our commitment in turn was that we were going to manage and govern with rigor, and we were going to budget like every dollar counts, because it does. And I'm really proud of our record of doing that. We have not borrowed a single dollar of long-term debt after 2016. And we have generated surplus after surplus that we've reinvested in our community, in capital investments that will make a difference for the long term in our city.
Hartford, no doubt, has so many bright spots, and we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes. But the city also comes with its own set of challenges, and you faced many when you were here in office these last 8 years. I wrote down a few of the times that I figured were probably really difficult and tough to manage, but I want to hear your thoughts on what some of those tough times look like for you.
Well, look, obviously the fiscal crisis when we came in is at the top of the list. But there was also the baseball park, which was off the rails when we came in, and we had to get that on track in the most responsible way we could. There was a pandemic that hit us right as it felt like we were starting to hit our stride. Coming into 2020, we had so much momentum, so much investment, and I think we were restoring confidence. And then we smacked into the COVID wall. And then, of course, the summer that followed the murder of George Floyd brought its challenges to every community. But I'm proud of the way we tackled them. I hope we tried to address them head on and in a way that put our community first. And of course, we also have lots of other challenges that were more expected. The challenge of gun violence that plagues so many communities and has been devastating for Hartford for so long. And we saw a spike in gun violence in the wake of the pandemic. Our team, I think, is doing more now than ever before to try to tackle that. But it's still traumatic for our community to experience that level of violence.
Very similar to what I was thinking were probably challenging in office too. Gun violence, no doubt. The pandemic brought its own set of challenges. And then redevelopment around Duncan Park you had to deal with when you first came in. And now that kind of still is an issue as well, right?
Litigation continues, but at the ballpark, we've got a ballpark that's been voted the best minor league ballpark in the country for multiple years in a row. You've got first phase of development that really proved that the demand is strong. Those units filled up as fast as they were built. And it's frustrating not to be able to move forward as quickly as we want with the next phase of development next to the ballpark. But I also think there are other opportunities to keep that momentum going. So as an example, you got the 13-acre parcel of land at the old RPI campus. I think that's going to become an opportunity for us to regain that momentum. And hopefully we'll be able to move forward on the lots right across from the ballpark soon. But overall, the broader vision of using that ballpark as the cornerstone of a bigger development that doesn't just create new residential opportunities, but helps to knit our neighborhoods back together and reconnect the downtown to the north end. That is very much alive, and there's a lot of progress and a lot of reasons, I think, to be confident that we're going to see that play out in the years ahead.
Let's talk about the future of Hartford. There is a large candidate field running for your position. What do you think of the candidates running, and have you endorsed anybody yet?
No, I haven't endorsed anybody yet. I think it's great there are a lot of people running. I think you want to have a lot of options for the community to consider. The process is going to go on over the next few months. You've got a convention, you've got a primary. I think that field will probably narrow down, but at this point I'm not taking any position.
What is your advice for the next mayor?
I think the most important advice to the next mayor is to trust the community. Don't be afraid to share bad news. Don't be afraid to acknowledge challenges. And my experience is if you do that, then people will support you when you try to address them in the right way.
Let's talk about your future now. What's next?
I don't know yet. I imagine when I'm done on January 1, for some time, I'll just do something completely different and get a little change of pace. But I don't know yet longer term.
Will we see you running here in Connecticut again?
I don't know yet. I've loved this job. I love this work. I think it's the right time to pass the baton, but I don't have any plans yet.
Tell me about the people here in Hartford that you're going to be moving on from. Is that hard?
Well, I'm not planning to move on from the people of Hartford. This is my city. This is my home. And it's going to stay my community. But that is one of the best parts of this job is the team that we've built that I get to work with and the people in the city. This is a beautiful community. This is a community full of people who love their city, love their neighborhoods, love their families. It's a beautifully diverse community. It's a resilient and a strong community. It gets knocked down and gets back up again and again, and I love it.
Why should people root for the city of Hartford?
Because it's a city worth rooting for. This is a city that has so much heart, that has so much spirit, and it has such good people, and I think it matters. It matters not just for this community; it matters for the whole state of Connecticut. That's one of the things that I tried to spread the word about when I first came in. Is that everybody in Connecticut's got a stake in the future of this city. It is the economic engine of this part of Connecticut. It's our state capital. It's a city with incredible history, and it's a city that punches so far above its weight when it comes to arts, culture, music, sports, and just a sense of community.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you, Jenn.
Special.
Appreciate it.
And as we said, it's a large field of candidates, mostly Democrats, according to the city's registrar of voters. Take a look here. We have former Superior Court judge and former Democratic State Senator Eric Coleman, Hartford Land Bank CEO Arunan Arumlampalam, Hartford City Councilman Nick Lebron, State Senator John Fonfara, U.S. Army veteran Giselle Jacobs, Pastor Renardo Dunn Jr., television entrepreneur Stan McCauley, Hartford resident Tracy Funye, and Mark Stewart Greenstein. So far, we've talked with several of the candidates here on The Real Story. Here's a look at some of those conversations we've had with them, what's driving their candidacy, and what they think the city needs next. Come January, Mayor Luke Bronin will leave office, and Hartford will have a new mayor. Hopeful candidates emerged quickly once Bronin made his announcement. 4 of them right now, all Democrats, leading in donations to their campaign. Eric Coleman, the first to announce his run, who's represented Connecticut in the Capitol building and the Superior Court, sees Hartford on the brink of a comeback.
Now there's this opportunity to come back into public service as a mayor of what I think is a great city. It's seen its heyday, and part of the task and part of the challenge is to restore the city to some semblance of what it was.
Senator John Fonfara, who has by far the most financial support for his campaign so far, a lifetime Hartford resident and lawmaker, is focused on a different reality in the Hartford he knew.
I grew up in public housing in Hartford until I was 15 years old. Most people know Hartford and know the South End, know about Charter Oak Terrace and Rice Heights. I'm a Rice Heights boy. What I grew up believing in a mixed race, mixed economy public housing project in Hartford that, and in my time growing up, that a colorblind society was a worthwhile place to be. We do not live in a colorblind society. If everyone were born and then pursued their lives with equal opportunity, that would be fine. But that's far from the case.
Nick Lebron, also a lifetime Hartford resident who graduated from the Hartford public school system, serves in the city council. He says he's grateful for the Hartford that raised him, but envisions a changed city as mayor.
I'm a Hartford success story, and I have a Hartford success plan, one that is a vibrant community, one that is unifies the community, one that is economically thriving, and one that is safe for everyone.
And Arunan Arumlampalam is the CEO of the Hartford Land Bank, a nonprofit that flips abandoned properties and sells them to residents to encourage home ownership here in Hartford. But he says even more than that experience, his family and his life as a resident himself are the biggest reasons to run.
I have kids in the city. Our 4 kids who are of school age all go to a public school in this city. And so, and I think it's in almost all of our lifetimes here in the city, we haven't had a mayor who's had kids in public schools in Hartford. And so I've got real literal skin in the game.
Mayor Luke Bronin picked up a city near bankruptcy and drove development, something all 4 eyeing his seat have in common: to continue that downtown progress, but reprioritize the neighborhoods.
I think downtown development is very important, but not to the detriment of the neighborhoods. I think the neighborhoods deserve and need to receive much more attention.
There's some areas that struggle with substance abuse, while other areas struggle with homelessness, and other areas that haven't been invested in for decades. And so having a very specific focus and targeted efforts to address those chronic needs.
Those neighborhoods are generators of poverty. Because children, we know this statistically, it's documented that children born into high poverty neighborhoods often end up in their life in poverty. It's not even about creating new revenue or new funding, but by directing portions of hundreds of millions of dollars currently in the state budget that would be directed into those neighborhoods for people, job training.
Now, my neighborhood has a 7% home ownership rate, which means that over 90% of the residents are paying dollars out the door, the hard-earned dollars, and never able to build the kind of wealth that allows for a middle class in cities like Hartford. And so creating that investment, and one of the things I'd like to do as mayor is to build a capital fund that allows Hartford residents to buy a home or start a business, because I think investing in our residents and creating the opportunities to build wealth, sustainable wealth, is the way forward in this city.
The candidates are starting to share their plans and priorities, campaigns focusing on public safety and gun violence.
We need to do a lot of things, but the very first step we need to take is to improve the relationship between police and the community, whether that involves community policing, de-escalation training for police officers.
We can't just desensitize the violence that continues to happen, and we have to really have courageous conversations about attacking it and addressing it.
Some making suggestions on creating more community opportunities, especially for those coming out of prison.
We haven't built a second chance society if we haven't given them an option to be productive. And so we need to real intentional focus on job training and employment for everybody coming out of our prisons. And what I would like to do is create an apprenticeship school in Hartford that could be a hub for all of the large-scale development that goes on in the city, but that brings folks who go through our school system and might not go on to a four-year college, but also folks returning into our society an option to succeed.
And discussions around education, from keeping college kids in the city to Hartford's youngest residents.
We act as if a child is born at 5 years old. They're not. We know that. There's 5 full years, the most important years in a child's life, in an individual's life. We need to focus so that every child in Hartford enters kindergarten ready. That means talking to mom and dad. That means the community having a standard, an expectation that all of our children are going to be in a formal preschool setting from 6 months of age, if we can, until they enter kindergarten.
And we are going to continue closely following the mayor's race and having more of the candidates on The Real Story. And coming up next on The Real Story, we keep our sights set on Hartford, the city's north end, consistently plagued with flooding problems, including this past week on July 4th. There is help coming in the form of federal dollars. More on that ahead. Plus, a new policy putting Connecticut ahead and some of Connecticut's babies. We're breaking it all down. Stay with us.